Alright, welcome back. You're watching NewsX. My name is Vineet. Washington is all geared up for the inauguration ceremony of Donald Trump, who is set to return to the White House. He secured a thumping victory over Kamala Harris in the election on the 5th of November 2024, and his comeback was undoubtedly a rare moment in the annals of history. He defied assassination attempts, criminal convictions, and a change in his political opponent midway. But that's not all. Donald Trump is the second president in US's 200-plus history to have come to power, lost the re-election, and come to power again. Now the star-studded ceremony at the Capitol in Washington shall host former US presidents, world leaders, and tech titans. But also in focus is Donald Trump's plans for the next 4 years. We all know that number one on his agenda is tackling illegal immigration. But what about the other policy changes that can be expected from Donald Trump? He has said a lot. We'll discuss the same with our guests in the next half an hour. Joining us on the show is Mr. Daniel Wagner, CEO of Country Risk Solution. He's joining us live from Portland, United States. Irina Sukerman, human rights and national security lawyer, editor-in-chief of the Washington Outsider, is joining us on the program. She's from New York. Mrs. Scott Faulkner, former chief administrative officer, U.S. House of Representatives and director of Personal Reagan Campaign, is also joining us live from Washington, D.C. Colin Govender, political analyst, joining us from Cape Town, South Africa as well. Welcome everyone, and thank you for being here on NewsX. Daniel Wagner, I'll begin with you. I hope you can hear me. Daniel Wagner? Mr. Wagner, if you can hear me? All right. Irina Sukerman, if you're there with us?
Yes.
Irina, all right. Irina, well, Donald Trump has said a lot. You know, he's going to do a lot. He's going to be targeting illegal immigrants. He's going to be figuring out hotlines. He's going to, in fact, act on the first day itself. Mass deportations are going to happen. Of course, this is going to create a frenzy. It could be a logistical nightmare as well. But the fact of the matter is, if something like this is orchestrated or articulated by Donald Trump, it will also result in human rights violations as well for the people who are already there in the United States. What do you make of this initiative by Donald Trump, and how likely is he going to be successful in terms of processing it?
Well, thank you so much for asking this question. Obviously, it's a complex issue, but no, it does not have to end up in human rights violations. Much will depend on implementation and execution, and arguably, the human rights violation consists of keeping of thousands of people in camps for years to come without adequate resources to process them, or keeping them on the streets because there are no economic resources to house them while they're waiting their asylum hearings. However, the start of the deportations will focus exclusively on individuals with criminal background. That is far from a human rights violation. There is absolutely no inherent right for anyone to be in the United States if they have a criminal record and they're here illegally in violation of existing laws. And pretty much everyone around the U.S., with the exception of several organizations that receive their funding from defending such people, agree that this is an appropriate measure to restore law and order. We simply do not have the resources to deal with the excess of individuals who have criminal records, and they are contributing to a rise in crime. Now that will be a monumental task in itself. There's about 700,000 people with criminal records who are in the U.S. illegally, and according to the nominated to the new Homeland Security Chief, it would cost about $86 billion to deport all of them. I think it's going to be a process, and I don't expect miracles. I think this entire process will take a long time, and Donald Trump will be lucky if he can make a dent in identifying the millions of people who have come here illegally. There will be logistical issues. There will be issues once all of these individuals with criminal records are processed, if that even happens during his term in office, which, as I said, may take far longer than people expect, then you have the second hurdle of identifying other people who may not have criminal records but may have committed a crime while here, or they may have been previously deported and have returned and have other migration related violations. They have family complications. Just identifying them is going to take time and resources, and of course a lot of the economic factors have to be taken into consideration. How far is Donald Trump willing to take it? Is he willing to penalize businesses employing such individuals? If so, it's going to make a major there is going to be a major problem, because a lot of small businesses depend on illegal migrants. There's a lot of workers who are here illegally. Is there going to be a parallel process to reform the legal immigration system to make it easier for people to come here legally and take care of some of the economic migrants who may not have done anything else wrong, and who may be willing to take the lower salaries for jobs that Americans don't want or do not or are not willing to take? All of these questions remain unanswered for the time being. But human rights violations, I don't think there's going to be any intention of deliberately violating anyone's human rights or throwing out people who are qualified for asylum.
All right. Scott Faulkner, I hope you're there with us. Thank you for joining us. I hope you can hear me.
Yes, indeed. Loud and clear.
Right. Well, Joe Biden, in one of his last addresses to the nation, to the people of America, went on to say that he's leaving a very strong economy behind. It's been the strongest ever since. And Donald Trump has all these plans, to do 10 things to, in fact, change a lot of ways in which America functions. Do you think that the system at this point in time in the United States needs to be tweaked extensively? Or do you think it's important for any candidate who's running for president, to make promises and make changes, to leave their own stamp as a president?
Well, first of all, anything Joe Biden says outside of his name, I'd get a second opinion. He's lied all 50 years of his entire political life, so everything he says has to be taken with a grain of salt. But in terms of the economy, the Biden 4 years created a lot of regulations, many of which by executive order. Trump is expected to sign up to 100 executive orders to reverse a lot of the Biden regulatory policies, and then to initiate a complete review of the other regulations that Biden and his administration put in place. That, in particular, how much Biden crippled America's domestic energy resources. So that will be changed quite a bit. The new incoming Secretary of Interior, Doug Burgum, who is a governor of North Dakota and one of the current major energy resource states, is going to be at the forefront of it, as will the new head of the Environmental Protection Agency. So deregulating and reversing the last 4 years is going to be important. The other piece of the puzzle is what Trump calls the big, beautiful reconciliation bill. He's talking about major changes to the tax code in a good way, removing taxes on tips, removing taxes on Social Security, which will help a lot of the lower income people and people on fixed incomes. He's then talking about trade and trying to level the playing field on that front. He's been talking about the creating an external revenue service to basically look at tariffs and both in terms of what can be collected and what can be used as leverage to change some of the trade relationships out there. So all these things are going to reshape the economy in good ways.
All right. Karlin Govenda, what are the expectations you have from Donald Trump? Let us not forget that he is also inheriting, a very volatile geopolitical ecosystem at this point in time. There are two wars, going on at this point in time, both which Donald Trump says wouldn't have started had he been president, and both that will be ended by him?
Vanakkam, Namaskaram, Namaste, and Sunny Bonani from Cape Town, South Africa. Vineet Malhotra, really great to be on your show and on NewsX again. Thanks for inviting me. Vineet, your role in bringing together voices around pertinent issues and moments in time is so important, the global knowledge share and understanding of the battle of ideas. And while often there are varying and opposing views around the table, it's so crucial that we speak truth to power, and where we as the worldly community differ, that we aim to differ with friendship. So good people, we must respect democracy because it's certainly better than feudalism, especially in a multicultural world. However, one can credibly argue that much of the democracies across the world is either feudal in nature or supported somewhat to a large degree by much feudal and or oligarchical actions. Either way, the will of the people in the United States of America have elected Donald Trump as their president, and this must be respected. Vineet, too often when politics is discussed and or the socioeconomic effects of politics is debated, people take an overly simplistic view as if there are only two sides to an answer. Politics is very layered and nuanced and should not really be looked at through the lens of a ball going back and forth in a tennis match. One does not have to always debate to win for a particular side. One can debate for broader understanding. So Vineet, I'm going to comment and raise issues in accordance with the more Indian diaspora pluralist framework of thought, because I think it's a better way of looking at both the singular and the multi. Since time immemorial, Indians have enjoyed interrogating ideas, both written and verbal, because we know ideas lead to consciousness, which leads to actions. So what ideas, consciousness, and actions come about with Donald Trump being USA's 47th president? We all know that politics is about the interplay between self-interest and group interest, especially when it comes to governance of one of the world's global superpowers. So in a socioeconomic context, what does it mean for the world, and in particular South Africans? What does it mean for South Africans of Indian descent? What does it mean for the broader Indian diaspora and those with any form of Indian heritage? I'll kick off with some prevailing sentiments and local banter, i.e. the multilateral relations between USA and South Africa. President Trump's policies on reindustrialization and tariffs on American imports is often an interesting chat in South Africa. Reindustrialization is a good thing for a country from both a citizen and country growth perspective, but perhaps not for a foreign company manufacturing A, B, and C. Local industrialization increases local economic complexity, which simply put grows the economy, grows skills and education to meet the demand, and ultimately increases local job creation while limiting the dependence on foreign powers and services. Imported related tariffs forces aspects or components of imported goods to rely on a larger degree of a localized workforce and more money to the public coffers for local use. These policies are good for the American people, but perhaps not so good for offshore multinationals and other groups, including the BRICS group, which includes South Africa and India. Here's the thing though, South Africa needs the same industrialization and tariff policies and action to grow our country. Industrialization has largely been political rhetoric here in South Africa, but all those who want to see a positive change regarding poverty are in favor of it.
Okay.
Will Trump's economic ideas extend outside of America's borders and support industrialization in South Africa? Or will Trump's rule showcase a double standard to its trading partners? And in a South African context, having American foreign direct investment continue to reinforce the networks and purpose of colonialism and apartheid.
All right. Let me rope in Daniel Wagner also into this conversation. Daniel, your idea of what Trump brings to the table, obviously, there is a lot that he wants to do away with. He wants to do away with the Paris Agreement. Again, I must say, he also wants to do away with a lot of, climate policies that Joe Biden also initiated. And of course, from an economic standpoint, Trump has been very, very macho, if I can use that word. He's been very, very aggressive about tariffs and quid pro quo that other countries have shown towards the Americans. How is this going to pan out when it comes for the world economy at large? How is this going to work out for crypto, something that Trump has supported tremendously and something that has shot up in the last few days, just because Trump is back as president? How do you look at this?
Well, I'm very concerned for America's economy and for the global economy. Let's bear in mind, of course, that since 2010, the U.S. economy, with the exception of during the pandemic, has done nothing but go up, the stock market and the economic indicators. So obviously there comes a time when that trend has to change. And the jolt that we can expect from Trump's policies in the American economy will, of course, likely change that trajectory. And then that will likely have a negative impact on the rest of the world. I think that's a real concern. I don't think it's people, sort of just saying my hair's on fire and running around the room. I think given the risk indicators in the world and the trajectory of many economies already in a downward direction, that we should not expect much of anything good. The tariffs are likely to send the American economy back into recession, ultimately. Certainly going to change the trajectory of GDP in the coming quarters. And it will take a little bit of time for that to manifest itself in the economic indicators, but in my mind, that doesn't seem to be much in doubt at all. As for the global economy, well, as the old saying goes, when America sneezes, the world catches a cold. I think that's certainly going to be in play here. As for crypto, well, I've been a crypto skeptic from day one. To me, it's like buying air, and it doesn't have any intrinsic value. But the markets tend to disagree, and clearly, if you're a crypto fan, you have reason to be enthusiastic about what may come under the Trump era, although I don't know what the end game is here. I don't know how high it can possibly go up. Some people are making bets that it's going to go into the hundreds of thousands of dollars. I don't know where they get that from. But overall, I think we have every reason to be concerned about what's coming.
Daniel, I also wanted to ask you about Donald Trump and his choices. Obviously, Elon Musk is an important pivot, an important part of the government efficiency plan, if we can call it that. His proximity to Donald Trump and the concept of crony capitalism, how is that going to play out and pan out? Is it good for the American economy?
Well, first of all, I think Joe Biden was absolutely right in his farewell address to, note that this is a growing concern, the role of oligarchs in the American economy. It's never been more present than it is right now, with all of these billionaires flocking to the inauguration. That all said, it's going to be a mixed bag from my estimation. We're going to see on one hand that the American market is going to get a nice jolt from the incentives that are going to be given and from the investments that are going to be made subsequently from businesses of all kinds. Yet, on the other hand, I think you could also argue that this is sort of like a caffeine jolt, that you're going to get a big push at the outset, and then you come down from your high and reality sets in. Again, I don't think it's going to take very long for these tariffs to start having a negative impact on the American consumer and the American economy. And that's when really the rubber is going to hit the road. Are we going to see, a net impact that is going to be positive overall in the long term for the American and then the global economy or not? I'm very skeptical.
Scott, how do you look at this situation? Oligarchs and the American economy. Obviously, China is right close behind when it comes to GDP figures with the Americans. Is Trump going to, in fact, widen that gulf, or is he going to be responsible for bridging it?
Well, let's talk about oligarchs for a minute. Again, it's ironic that Biden, who just gave the Medal of Freedom, the highest civilian honor in America, to George Soros, who's one of the most toxic influences in America in the last 10 years. all of the crime that has been skyrocketing in a lot of our American cities are because of the prosecutors and that were soft on crime that Soros funded to go into place. So it's ironic again for a person who awarded a toxic oligarch to warn about other oligarchs. But in terms of China, obviously that's going to be a major part of Trump's next 4 years. China is very muscular on its expansionism in the South China Sea and challenging different peoples, even Vietnam and Philippines, their territorial waters. So the whole right of free passage is going to be an important point, possibly flashpoint for Trump versus China. The other piece of the puzzle is clearly the incredibly lopsided trade relationship that America and China has. So reindustrializing America, trying to bring American industrial base back to the United States is going to be a key part to that. Also, this whole issue of, again, tariffs. What do we do to, again, bring China to heel? Because China is not a fair player. I mean, we all know stories going back at least a decade or more about how much China steals intellectual property from other countries and from other companies around the world. How do we deal with that? Even though China is part of the World Trade Organization, they are not a fair player. So that's going to be a big issue. And so once again, as Trump's team comes into office, only a few will probably be sworn in tomorrow. It'll probably take all the way through February to bring his full team of presidential appointees into his administration. And what can he do with executive orders? What will he start doing once his team is fully in place?
All right, Irina, a couple of wars Trump is also inheriting. He's obviously made it clear what he plans to do and what the role of the United States is going to be when it comes to the conclusion of these wars. Do you think that's a handy distraction for Donald Trump when he navigates through his second presidency?
Well, the call trying to end wars a distraction. I think it's a major part of U.S. foreign policy. That said, I think much less is in Donald Trump's hands that he is trying to take credit for. For instance, the ceasefire between Hamas and Israel right now is hardly an end to a war. It retains a terrorist organization in charge of Gaza. It certainly provides Trump with something to take credit for early in the presidency if the deal works out the way it's supposed to. But there are many questions about it. Terrorist organizations not known to keep their word. And there are many downsides to this ceasefire. It's hardly an end to hostilities in the long run. It's hardly an end to the situation. The war in Russia and Ukraine is already being acknowledged as not something that can be finished within the next few months. Russia has rejected Trump's peace plan proposals, and reality on the ground shows that so long as Russia has the means to advance and hold existing territory, it will continue to wreak havoc. We have seen in the last weeks Russia take over several major mines in Ukraine, which provides a very important geopolitical dimension. I think it's not a distraction, but I do think it's a distraction to try to take credit for
we unfortunately have run out of time, Rina, but we've had a very healthy, a very important, very insightful, profound conversation, and it's going to be exciting as well as anxious to see how the next 4 years with Donald Trump at the helm of affairs in America is going to turn out. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining us from all across the world and sharing your valuable thoughts.